Hey, legends, welcome back to another episode of Hey You, Get a Real Fucking Job. I am Reggie B. I am your host, and I got to tell you, we've got, a legend in the house, so to speak. This is Kevin Palmieri. He's talking to us from Worcester, Massachusetts. I'm probably screwed up the state name, but hey, that's us Canadians, right? We screw things up when it comes to U.S. names. But listen, Kevin is a peak performance coach. He's a CFO and founder of Next Level University, co-host of the Next Level University podcast, which has over 1,200 episodes, is a global top 100 podcast heard in over 140 different countries. Kevin has given, hundreds of speeches, trainings, and coaching calls with people worldwide who are looking to better themselves. The company is called Next Level University, and they believe in a heart-driven, no BS approach to holistic self-improvement for dream chasers, right? I call you legends. Kevin calls you dream chasers. And they're committed to helping you get to that next level of your life, love, health, and wealth. Kevin, thanks for coming on the show.
Reggie, thank you so much for having me. I love the energy. It's my goal to keep up with you on this Saturday recording. I'm going to do my best to stay on your wavelength.
Hey, I'm sure you'll be on my wavelength and above. I got to tell you, when your people reached out to my people, and I got to clarify that, right? Kevin does have people. My people are me. I'm the chief bottle washer. I do it all here. But, when Kevin's people reached out and I started reading his bio, it's like, holy shit, here's a guy who's, done great things in this industry, is doing very well at it. And here's me, the new kid on the block. It's kind of like, the new boxer stepping into the ring with Mike Tyson. I'm not quite sure, how many rounds I'm going to go here. But, I'll just say if I screw this up, I'm just blaming Kevin and his people. So
yeah, I like it. I like it.
So, no, you know what? I'm excited about it. So I want to talk, usually when I start these, I talk about, let's talk about the business, learn why you got into that. But I know your business got started kind of early on in your life because of some things that went on. So I kind of want to back up and I want to let's talk about who Kevin was growing up. Let's learn what got you to that point. And I know it was kind of in your mid-20s when it was kind of an aha moment for you and your life took a turn and you made some tough decisions. So I want to know, let's back up. Tell me about Kevin Palmieri, the individual, the kid. Who were you growing up and give us a bit of your background.
Yeah. So growing up, I was a kid who didn't have a dad. I didn't know my dad. I didn't meet my dad until I was 27. So we grew up in a lower middle class family, didn't have a lot of money, and I didn't have a dad. And that was really the big thing for me is the self-identifier is something must be different, something must be wrong, I must be broken, my family must be broken because
Really?
everybody else has two parents. Everybody I know, it's like mom, dad, mom, dad, mom, dad.
Okay.
So that was a really hard thing for me. And I have vivid memories of like the first day, not necessarily the first day of school, but like in middle school, you'd go around the room and you'd say, what does your mom do for work? What does your dad do for work?
Right.
I don't know. I just made up construction. Like construction.
Okay.
He's in construction. So that was really like the through line of my early childhood, Reggie, was I didn't have a dad. We didn't have a lot of money. That was part of it. From there, I was just a normal kid. I rode my bike. I played sports. I played outside with my friends. We play in the woods. We paintball. And nothing really super unique or interesting happened. Where things started to kind of shift for me was during high school when I realized I didn't want to go to college.
Okay.
That's when things really started to kind of separate from quote unquote normalcy. So at the time I was training mixed martial arts and I was like, I want to be a professional fighter. That's what I want to do. I don't want to go to college. I don't want to put myself into debt to figure out what I want to do. I'll figure it out myself. So I'm pumping gas at a local gas station. I'm training mixed martial arts. And then all my friends are getting ready to go away to college. So that was my initial like, okay, I'm entering the real world. I'm a gas station attendant who trains mixed martial arts. That's my goal.
Right.
I end up tearing my shoulder, realize this fighting thing might not be the best case scenario for me. So I end up job hopping for the next like 3 or 4 years. And over the next 3 or 4 years, I was a personal trainer. I cleaned floors and bathrooms at a hospital. I was a forklift operator. I was a truck driver. I did many, many, many different things.
Right.
So now it doesn't really seem like not going to college was a great idea.
Right.
At this point
Okay.
in my life.
Yeah.
I get this unique opportunity in an industry called weatherization. And all that means is we would go into buildings and make them more energy efficient.
Okay.
So the company I worked for, we worked on state-owned buildings. So we got state or government contracts.
Right.
When you're getting paid from the state and it's a state job, you get what's called prevailing wage. All that means is when you write the contract, you basically have to pay what the state tells you, your employees. So it's so nobody can go in like lowball for a job.
Right. Right.
So when I interview for this job, they say, yeah, you'll be making anywhere from, $40 to $60 an hour. And I was like, there's no way this is real. There's no possibility that this is real.
Right.
I end up getting this job. The second time I ever met my boss, I got in a car with him and drove 8 or 9 hours from Massachusetts to Delaware. I moved into a house that he had rented for us to be down there. I met 6 or 7 other people I'd never met before. And then I proceeded to do a job the next day I had never done. And I remember when I got down there, I was so broke. All I could afford was deli meat, bread, and diet soda.
Right.
That's what I ate every day for the first week because I didn't have any money.
Yeah.
I'll never forget. I got the first check and it was for 40 hours at $50 an hour. And it ended up being whatever, 14 bucks.
Nice.
And I was like, oh my goodness, I can't believe this is my life.
Yeah.
This is it. I found it.
I'm rich.
I'm rich. Everything I did paid off. Now, here's the interesting thing. I think there's always the luster of new. Like a new job's always really good at the beginning.
Yes.
Right. Everything is. But if you fast forward, I think I got that job when I was like 23, maybe. If you fast forward a couple of years, I'm 25. By all outside standards, I'm living the dream. I have a sports car. I just won a bodybuilding show, so I had the body of my dreams.
Right. Yeah.
My girlfriend was a model. I have a high-paying job. I have a new apartment. I'm crushing it, quote unquote.
Yeah, for sure.
But internally, I'm very miserable. I'm scarce. I'm uncertain. I'm insecure. My girlfriend, we move in together to a nice apartment. She ends up leaving me a couple months later because I'm just such an insecure, scarce, fearful. I'm just not a good partner. I'm not abundant.
Right. Okay.
It's very hard to give into something that you don't have yourself. It's very hard to pour into someone when you don't have much to pour from yourself. So she left me. And at this point in my life, I had not experienced or been made aware of self-improvement. I didn't know what that meant.
Right.
I dipped my toe into self-improvement. And then I said, honestly, I think the issue is I need to make more money. I think that's what needs to happen. I need more money. I just haven't made enough yet to actually find happiness.
Right.
Close, but not close enough. So that next year, I dedicated to making as much money as humanly possible. So I'm 26 at this point. I get a promotion as a foreman at my company. Awesome. Love it. Perfect. And that year was the busiest year the company had ever had. I spent 10 months out of the next 12 months on the road.
Oh, wow.
So every single week, we'd get in a van on Sunday. We'd
pack
drive.
Up.
Yep. Yeah, that was it. And I just lived in hotels, basically. Get to the end of the year, open my final pay stub, $100,000 at 26, no college degree. Should be the pinnacle.
Yeah, no shit.
And I remember opening my pay stub and realizing for this last year and for much of my life, I have lived unconsciously. Just like going through the motions, not really understanding why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Right.
Opposite of unconscious is hyperconscious. I started a podcast called the Hyperconscious Podcast.
Yeah.
Fell in love with podcasting, fell out of love with my job. I've already made it to the top of the mountain. I don't want to do it again. Right. I know what it takes now. I'm not willing to sacrifice another 10 months of my life for this. That's not the answer.
Right.
I don't know what the answer is yet, but I know that ain't it. So I start calling out of work. I start leaving the job site early. I start showing up late. I'm not a great employee anymore because I just don't care.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm podcasting on the side on the weekends. And I just got to the point where I felt so trapped and so stuck and so helpless and so hopeless. And like, it was too real. Like the way I felt in terms of my opportunity to leave my job, it just didn't seem possible. So I woke up in a hotel room in New Jersey, which is 6 hours from where I lived.
Yeah.
Alarm clock went off at 5:15, sat up, slid to the edge of the bed, lacing up my work boots. And that morning, it was like there was 10 televisions on in my head at the same time, and every single one was on a different station. One is saying you're stuck here forever. I know you want to leave, but you got lucky to get this job and you will never make this money again.
Right.
Second voice I'm hearing is, if you do work up the courage to leave, what will your friends say? They all look up to you, right? You make a lot of money.
Yeah.
What will your family say? Your family's very proud of what you've become. When, we had jokes amongst my friends earlier in life where if anybody was going to end up in jail, it was going to be me.
Right. Yeah.
I made it through that.
Yeah.
And then the hardest thing, and I'm sure this will resonate with you as a new podcaster. What am I going to be, a podcaster?
Yeah.
That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to leave this and go podcast.
Right.
Right. And in that moment, in the darkness, in the helplessness, I felt that if I was to take my life, I would take my problems with me.
Wow.
Very blessed that I have amazing people around me. So I reached out to one of my friends. He's now my business partner and the CEO of our company. And I told him what was going on. And he was somebody who had studied self-improvement for his whole life. He's a genius. He is self-improvement in a nutshell.
Right.
Kev, over the last couple of years, your awareness has changed a ton, but your environments have remained the same. Right. I think it's time for you to change your environment. So I ended up leaving that job 3 or 4 months later, and then starting the very challenging task of figuring out how to become an entrepreneur. I don't have any income now. I have savings some, but
right, yeah.
Then I became a full-time podcaster, quote unquote entrepreneur. And then from there, we tried to figure out how to grow it, scale it, monetize it. And here we are, whatever it is, 6 years later. And now we do an episode every day. And this is our business.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what was it that you think led to the darkness? Like you were fortunate enough to realize it, but what was it that, those things weren't fulfilling enough? What was it about all that just you realized that, no, this isn't it? Because like you said, you, on the outside, you were living the dream.
Yeah.
Every guy who's in their 20s wants to be you, right? Like that's, a bodybuilder, a model for a girlfriend, the sports car, $100,000 a year. Like, what's wrong with you? What was going on that you realized, no, this isn't doing it?
To your point, I think this is the interesting thing. My external state was so shiny and golden and perfect. My internal state was extremely undeveloped.
Okay.
And I'm willing to bet if you look at, and again, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a therapist, so I'm not saying this from a professional manner, but if you look at celebrities who end up struggling in life,
right,
I'm convinced it's because their external state and what everybody thinks of them and where the pedestals everybody puts them up on is not congruent with their internal state.
Right.
It's not congruent with what they think about themselves, how they feel about themselves, the stories they tell themselves. So I think for me, I had chased external significance for so long that I assumed, okay, I'm not happy because I don't have enough.
Right.
I'm not fulfilled because I don't have enough. I think what really made it hard for me is I knew that I had achieved quote unquote success, but I didn't know that I didn't define it yet. And I think for me, it was such a large piece of awareness all at once of like, oh, you're never going to be fulfilled living life the way you are.
Right.
You have to change everything. And I don't know what to change yet. I have no clue what to change. I think awareness is a powerful thing, and it's something I talk about all the time. But I do believe, just like anything else, you can get too much awareness at once. So I think I got too much awareness, and then I didn't have enough opportunity to implement the new awareness I had. And I was stuck in the cycle of, I know I don't want to be here. I know this isn't it. I know it's not going to get any better, but I don't know what to do yet. And
right.
I just think it like not broke me, but it just felt like such a hopeless, helpless place. I didn't know what to do.
You fell into the trap that a lot of young people fall into, and that's chasing what society tells you makes you successful. And, I had a podcast with a great guest who's an imposter syndrome expert. And, he talked about not even knowing what our own values are. We live off the values that are passed down to us, that are instilled in us, whether it's, through parents, through school, through religion, whatever it is. And so we think, well, that's what it's going to take. That's what will make me successful. And then you find out, well, I've got these things, and I feel empty. Like, what the hell? This is what I was told would bring me happiness and everything. And you found out, kind of the hard way when you're sitting on the edge of a bed, and it's like, yeah, you know what? I think we'll just pack it in, and then I can shut off all these damn TVs that are playing in my head,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so yeah, that's a huge realization. And like you said, not having those tools. Okay, I realize what the hell's wrong, but
Yeah.
what do I do with it? Like, you know what, you're fortunate enough to realize it, and then it's like, okay, now what? I got to start all over again. Like, you know, everything I've been doing is wrong. So that's tough, especially in your 20s. You know what? I know, and you and I have a lot of the similar background. I never knew my dad. You know, my mom babysat for a living and that. So I didn't grow up in a wealthy family and things like that. And yeah, it's tough when you don't know what you don't know, and where do I go from here, sort of thing, right? So,
Yeah.
you know, I've been lied to my whole life, sort of thing. The things they told me were happy, I have them, and I'm not happy. So, so you got into podcasting. So why podcasting? What was it about podcasting that you thought, I'm just going to pick up this mic, I'm going to throw away that $100,000 paycheck, and yeah, I'm going to talk to people, and maybe they'll listen, maybe they won't.
Yeah. So much like many people, many podcasters, I listen to Joe Rogan.
Okay.
And that was one of the things after I made the money. It might have even been before I made that money. I remember watching a podcast with Joe Rogan and one of his buddies, Duncan Trussell. And this, for some reason, I was ready for this awareness. I don't know where it came from, but I was ready for this. They said, just imagine, this is wild, but imagine an alien lands on your front lawn, walks into your house at 7:00 in the morning where you're making your coffee, getting ready to go to work. And you're rushing around, you're putting on clothes you don't want to wear. You leave the house that you can't afford, in the car that you can't afford, go to the place that allows you to afford all the things you just left, but you hate 40 hours of your week every single week. And the alien sits you down on Friday and says, hey, did you have a good week? Like, did you enjoy that? And you say, no, I hate it. I don't want to do any of that. The alien would say, what are we doing here?
Right.
Right? Like, what is this all about? The second I heard that, for some reason, it was like, oh my goodness, I will never look at life the same again. I can't. So Joe Rogan was a part of it. The other part of it, and this is the interesting part, my co-host and co-founder and the CEO,
Alan, right? Yeah.
Alan, yep. I met him at a party after not seeing him for years. We went to school together, so we knew each other. And he's like, yeah, man, I have this YouTube show. And it's called Conversations Change Lives. And I'd love to interview you about like fitness and health and stuff. And I was like, all right, I don't know what any of this means.
Right.
It's probably going to suck, just so you know, I don't know what I'm talking about. And it was interesting because he kept delaying it. He's like, I can't do it this week. Let's do it next week. And eventually I texted him and I said, dude, are we going to do this or not? Like, let's do this. Let's do this interview.
Yeah.
So I go and meet him, and one of my other buddies is there, and we do this interview. It's like an hour and 45 minutes. We get to the end of it. Alan goes to the bathroom. My other buddy is sitting in the room with me. And I said, imagine if you could do that for a living. Like, that hour and a half went by in like 5 minutes. If I could do that for a living, oh my goodness, I would be off to the races. And that all happened in this very short amount of time where I already made the money. So after that, I researched podcasting. And within like a week or 2 weeks, I had all the equipment. And I was on Google figuring out how to record and how to do an intro and where to get artwork. And yeah, I was inspired by Joe Rogan. And I also had a little bit of experience with rapping. So I had rapped before, so I felt comfortable in front of a microphone.
Okay.
And I remember I also used to do Facebook videos before Facebook had lives. I would record a video on my laptop and then upload it to Facebook. And one of the videos, the first one I ever did, it was, do you deserve to be happy? And my thesis in this, it's very similar to what we talk about today. My thesis was, I believe you deserve what you work for. I don't think you deserve to make $100,000 unless you work in the amount that it would take to make $100,000.
Right.
I don't really think you deserve your dream relationship until you become the type of person who is capable of attracting and sustaining your dream relationship. That, for me, I just think it made sense to podcast because I had already kind of done it. And I thought I had a unique perspective when it came to awareness. So it just made sense based on Joe Rogan, based on imagine if you could do this for a living, and based on the fact that, you know, I had rapped before, so I kind of understood how to do it.
Right. And it's amazing, you know, when you have that aha moment that seems to come out of nowhere, right? Like for you, it was, you know, listening to Joe Rogan speak, and appearing on Alan's, I had a guest on who spent 8 years of university and schooling in that, and listened to one audiobook, and in 6 months gave up that 8 years of schooling because it was like, holy shit, it just opened my eyes. And you just never know where that's coming from, right?
Yeah.
And how it can change your life. So tell us, so you decided, okay, this is it. I'm getting into podcasting. I'm going to make it or break it. Tell us how you took that, right, your very first podcast, and turned it into, multiple six-figure business that you've got going now. Like, I'm sure it wasn't a straight line. I'm sure it wasn't just a climb up the mountain sort of thing.
Yeah.
But, like you say, you spent the time, researching and this and that. And, how did you get from there to where you are now?
Yeah. So when I left my job, I think I probably had 15 or 20 episodes up.
Okay.
When I left, Alan and I partnered up, and we said, hey, you got a podcast, I got a podcast. Let's do this.
Right.
Like, let's just do this together. At this point, we're really good friends, like, best friends, basically. And we all love self-improvement. We love talking about growth. All right, cool. Let's do this together. The other thing I didn't understand about that is now I have built-in accountability.
Right.
Right. So since the time we partnered up, we've never missed an episode.
Right.
And we never will. Like, we do one every day, and that's our brand. So in the very beginning, it's interesting, Reggie, because you would think somebody who had just left their job would be hyper-focused on money. When Alan and I started working together, we started working on our characters more than anything.
Right.
We weren't bad guys. We weren't bad humans, but we weren't evolved from a character standpoint as much as we felt we needed to be.
Now, just so I understand, are you talking about who you were personally, or a brand? Like when you say
Personally.
character? Okay.
Personally.
Okay.
Because something interesting happened. When I left my job and I started leaning more into it, so within the first year, we figured out at a pretty deep level that most of our listeners are women.
Okay.
They're not tattooed bodybuilders who love mixed martial arts like
right.
me.
Right.
Why? Interesting. Because I had very low self-worth. My self-worth was garbage. One of the reasons I struggled so much. We realized that, me doing a Joe Rogan style podcast isn't going to work. And that's how I started. I started with a lot of swearing, and I started with maybe some more, I don't want to say crude jokes, but it was bro-ish. It was more of a bro podcast. Nothing wrong with that.
Right.
But we realized that we're serving an audience, this is the interesting thing, who has been hurt by toxic masculinity. We cannot be that.
Okay.
We can never, ever, ever, ever be that.
Right.
So for the first year and a half, Alan and I, we kept recording episodes. We did social media. There wasn't a lot going on in the business, but we would be behind the scenes saying like, hey, you can't say that anymore. We don't say that anymore. We don't make those jokes anymore. That's not who we are. We don't do that. Right. We're done with that. And there was like tears, and there was arguments, and that was one of the hardest times ever. So after we got that figured out, and we said, all right, cool. We're character driven. We want to focus on that. We've always wanted to focus on that. All right, cool. Then it was, okay, we have to make money at some point.
Right.
Right. So at this point, we're probably 2 years in, and we haven't made any money from the podcast. Now it's like, I'm $35,000 in credit card debt, right? I've already burned through my savings. Everything is coming to a quick end if we don't figure this out.
Yeah.
So Alan and I got flown down to Florida by one of our mentors to live with him for a month, because he had a house that had, every room had like a camera, a whiteboard, and a TV. So you could do like courses. You could create your own courses.
Yeah.
Right. So we went down there to do some course creation. I remember when I was down there, I told Alan, I was like, dude, I'm out of money. Like, I have nothing left. I have like nothing in my bank account. The credit cards, they're not going to give me any more. I need to start making money. So Alan said, all right, cool. We're going to start coaching. And I was like, on what? What are we going to coach on? And he's like, well, our podcast is self-improvement, right? At this point, it's still hyper conscious. People listen to our show because we help them raise their awareness, and then we give them new tactics. We're going to coach people on that. Peak performance, habits, relationships. And I was like, I've never done that. I don't know what to do.
Right.
He said, what you're going to do is you're going to get a free client. And I was like, no, you missed the point. I need to make money.
I'm broke. Yeah.
I'm broke. And he's like, this is the way to do it, Kev. Trust me. It's like, all right, cool. So I reach out to a young lady named Jenna, and I said, hey, Jenna, I've never coached before. I'm interested in coaching. I've never done it, so I don't want to charge you anything. 2 months completely free. Are you in? And she's like, absolutely, I'm in. So over the next 8 weeks, I ended up acquiring 4 other free clients. At the end of that, I just said, hey, I can't do this for free. I actually do have demand on my time now. What do you think of $50 a week? And they all said yes. So I went from making $0 to making $250 a week. And that was the proof of concept of, okay, this is something that, there's a potential to that. And then really from there, we just treated it more like a business where everything pours into the next layer of the business. That's the way, I think that's where a lot of people get lost, is they think that the more listens you get, the more money you're going to make. Not true, unless you have a business set up properly, which most people don't.
Right. Yeah.
So for us, we adopted a community listener first approach where you're never too busy to talk to your listeners. You're never too busy to form a deeper community. And that's the best way to win. That's really what we focused on. And then it was like, okay, we'll add group coaching. We have live events, but it was always for us. We tend to build in the opportunity for supply long before we have the demand. And then we just backfill demand. That's kind of how we've done it.
Right. Okay. So when you started, you said something about, you realized who your listeners were. You had a certain style, and then you realized, okay, we need to switch because our listeners, like you said, the toxic masculinity, excuse me. But did you feel, if you had a certain style in mind, did you feel now you weren't being true to yourself because you had to switch it to please the listeners? Or did you think, you know what, this is a business, right? It's not so much about what I want, it's what the listeners want. So we're going to give the listeners what they want, not necessarily what we want.
Yeah, that's a great question. I started to take it more seriously from a place of, it's not about me. Okay. So for me, I felt, if anything, honestly, I felt like I was being more authentic because I'm not Joe Rogan. Right. I'm not the type of person to like swear for no reason. Like, that's not who I am.
Right.
I think I adopted that mindset because in the beginning, I told Alan this. I was like, yeah, I want to be able to like smoke weed on the podcast and interview people. And it's like, right. It seemed like it'd be the best thing in the world.
Right.
But I think in the beginning, we're all trying to figure out our footing, and we're all kind of, you're taking your inspiration, and oftentimes your inspiration affects your identity a little bit.
Right.
So in the beginning, I wanted to be Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
When I started to realize I have my own unique style, and like, it's actually cloaked in vulnerability, that's something that really, really connects with our audience. And that's something I actually want to be. That's when I started leaning into that. So no, for me, when I realized that we're serving this audience and we can really, really help them, my why is big enough where it's the same reason. I mean, we do 7 episodes a week. It's not because I want to.
Right.
Because there's 7 days in the week. If somebody comes up with an 8th, we'll record another one. That's
right. Yeah.
Because I feel the responsibility. Like, I can do it. I can do that to impact somebody. I can do that. That's sustainable for me. I'll figure out how to get there. For me, it's more from a place of service than anything else.
Right.
And in the beginning, it was more from a place of entertainment. That's why I wanted to be that way. Now I want to help. I actually want to help. And I think I'm very, very proud of the person I've become. So I would say maybe in the beginning, I was scared that I wasn't authentic, but as I understood, just be you.
Yeah.
Like, be the version of you that you actually would need on this podcast. That's what really helped me get through in the beginning.
So it almost sounds like the podcast helped you realize who you really were, right? You thought you were, Joe Rogan, we all think we're Joe Rogan when we start out, right? But you thought, yeah, this is who I am. Yeah, I'm going to have the fun. And then getting into it, it sounds like the podcast actually opened, your eyes up to, no, this is who I really am.
Yeah.
This is the true Kevin. And yeah, it sounds like, the podcast was a good thing for you. Because do you find that a lot of people do get in for, and I'm sure I'm probably no different, but for the personal reasons? I want this show to be what I want it to be, right? This is about me. I'm the damn host. I'm going to make the show what I want it to be. And do you find that a lot of people start out that way? And do they have a hard time transitioning once you figure out who your listeners are?
Well, the interesting thing is not everybody should transition.
Okay.
Right? Like, for us, it's way more about, so let me frame it this way. we're trying to have the most successful self-improvement company in the history of the world.
Okay.
Ever. Right. So like up with the Tony Robbins, the Brendan Burchards, that for us, we're doing it a little bit differently from a place of we're always focused on solving a unique problem in a unique way for a unique person. That's how we reverse engineer every single episode we do.
Okay. Yeah.
So for us, it's a little bit different. For other people, it depends on what the ultimate goal is. I have a lot of people that come to me and they say, yeah, I just want to have cool conversations with cool people. And it's like, that's fine, but let me lay this out for you. 3 reasons people don't succeed in anything, really.
Yeah.
Number 1, false expectations. Number 2, unaligned or misaligned approach. Number 3, inaccurate time perspective. Number 1, if your expectations are that you're going to be the next Joe Rogan and you approach it because of that, you're going to put yourself into a paradigm of most likely failure, and you're not going to want to do this anymore.
Right.
So I always sit people down and just say, what problem are you solving? You tell me what problem you're solving. When you have somebody on, are you solving the problem of boredom? Cool. Are you solving the problem of lack of comedy? Cool. It all depends, for me at least, on what the end game for the person is. Because if you want to make millions and millions of dollars, first of all, again, expectations.
Right.
There's a very, 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 very small group of human podcasters that do that. So throwing that out there right off the bat, if you want to just have conversations with people, it's not necessarily going to get as big as you want. So it all depends on, if you tell me, I want this, I want to get 100,000 downloads 5 years from today, and I want to get this to $1 million. It's like, I would not do it the way you're doing it, most likely.
Right.
But it depends, because not everybody wants to do what we're doing. And here's the truth. Not everybody wants to work as hard, and that's okay. Right? Like, I work 80, 90 hours a week.
Right.
Not everybody wants to do that. Understandably so. Understandably.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
It's contextual to me of, why are you doing this? Are you doing this so you can meet cool people? Do whatever you want.
Right.
Are you doing this because you actually want to create some sort of potential financial upside? You have to be a little bit more intentional when it comes to the understanding of marketing and the problems you're solving, the value you're delivering, than you would otherwise. That's what I would say.
Right. Yeah. And it's funny how you mentioned, you're doing 80, 90 hours a week, because a lot of people look at podcasting and say, hey, this shit is easy, right? You're just sitting there, you're talking to somebody. But, I have a weekly podcast. And I know even the amount of time I put into researching the guests and finding guests and stuff like that. You do a 7-day-a-week, 8-day-a-week podcast if you could, right? So I can just imagine the amount of time that goes into, preparing what you're going to do, coming up with enough ideas for 1,200 episodes, 7 days a week has got to be, times where you're stressed out and pulling your hair out and saying, what the hell, let's just do weekly. It'd be so much easier. Right. Yeah. But, if you want to be successful in anything, don't plan on it being a part-time job, because, and that's the thing that, I think a lot of people don't realize either, is when you start something, you're creating a job, basically, right? Mm-hmm. You have to work in it, not so much on it, but you're always in it. And it's making that transition to, okay, now I can work on the business, that you can start maybe stepping away from that 80, 90 hours a week, unless that's, your thing and you're driven by it. But it can sometimes be hard to make that transition as well. So it's good that you threw out, you know what? Yeah, we're putting in 80, 90 hours a week. Don't kid yourself, right?
Well, for me, I always say results not typical. I tell my clients all the time, you're most likely you're not going to get to where we are.
Right.
The reason I know is because you probably shouldn't, unless you're willing to trade everything else you have. Because that's what I did. I traded everything else I have. And I'll never not. This is the understanding for me. I didn't start this to work less. Okay. That's what I tell people. Like, if you're using this as an opportunity to work less, you're going to have to work a lot more in the beginning. Right. The law of time and energy, it's there. You're going to have to put something in. And the people who have come in and said, well, it's going to work, I'll just put in a little time, they usually don't last very long. So it all depends on the ultimate goal. That's it.
Right.
That's what I'll say. Our goals are very big, so
Yeah.
our approach will always be very different. If you just want to have a show and you want to get some listeners and have some good conversations, that's completely different, and the standards are completely different also.
Right. So if you were to coach somebody, who's just getting started, right? What do you say? And you know, I don't want you to give away the farm because I know this is what you do at Next Level University.
I'll give the whole farm away. I'm good.
But what do you say to the person? And I'm thinking, probably the first thing that they should think about is, what is your why for doing a podcast? Like you said, do you just want to interview fun people? Have at it, right? You got no expectations of making money. You just want to sit here and talk. Great. So what do you say to people who are looking at, this podcasting thing seems kind of fun. Where should they be looking to get started?
Oh man. Okay. Couple things. One, I always think to myself, there's a pyramid of quality. So in the beginning, you want to make sure you have good audio and you have some video. I know some people are against video.
Right.
It doesn't make any sense to me not to do it, because throw up the raw version on YouTube. I don't care if you edit it all, throw it up there.
Right.
That's baseline one. We're getting decent audio, decent video. Baseline. So from there, never stop improving. Never stop improving. You figure out, okay, you know what? In that last episode, my static was a little bit much. Why? Let me turn down the mixer. Let me move my cell phone away from the microphone. Okay, right. Cool. The camera, it just ain't it. It's good, but it needs to get better. 100 episodes in, maybe you upgrade. The first thing I tell people is, don't ever assume that the stuff you started with is the stuff you're going to finish with. Especially your name and especially your artwork. I am the bad guy on many of the calls I do, because I jump on. This happened yesterday. Somebody was teasing me.
Yeah.
They're like, are you going to tell us to change our artwork? Because they listened to my other podcast.
Right.
And I was like, no, I'm not going to tell you that. But when we start, it's almost like, the Dick and Harry show with Dick and Harry. It's like, all right, cool. What is it about?
Right.
And if you're not famous as Dick and Harry, nobody's going to know about your show. Okay, I might check on that. So after I talk about those details, for me, I say two things. Number one, what is the unique problem you're solving? Who you're solving it for? And in what way do you solve it? Those are three things I talk to everybody about.
Right.
And then I always suggest people create a podcast business. What does that mean? It means you have social media as the top of your business. Okay. That's where people are going to find you. Yep. They'll find you from word of mouth. They can find you from searchability. Trust me, social media is a huge part of having a podcast, not just from views, but I'll get into it. Yep. So you have social media. In a perfect world, people will find you on social media and they'll say, this person has a podcast. Cool. Let me check out the podcast. All right. Then you have your podcast. That's the second layer of your business. This is where things go off the rails usually. Usually what happens is people come to me and they say, I have social media and I have the podcast and I have this offer at the bottom. Like I coach, I have a planner, I have whatever it is.
Right.
Nobody's doing it. It's like, of course they're not doing it. You're not nurturing your audience. So after the podcast, I tell people to create a Facebook group or a group of some sort. It doesn't have to be Facebook.
Yeah.
And then some sort of freebie that isn't scalable. So I don't aspire to like create a free 5-step PDF lead magnet. That I don't like that.
Right.
I like a monthly mastermind where you talk to your audience directly once a month over Zoom. Not scalable, not automatable, super valuable. Then below that, you have some sort of monetization point. The reason I like to set people up with that is because in an ideal world, you'll always ask a simple question. Why is somebody here and where do they go next? Why is somebody there and where do they go after that? One of the reasons many podcasters don't succeed is because they have a giant hole between the podcast and then anything they're trying to charge for.
Right. Okay.
I focus there. I focus on the nurture part, because if you think about it, if you treat the relationship like a real relationship, eventually there can be profit. Eventually.
Right.
But the expectation is I have a podcast that drops one episode a week. After I listen to that episode, I expect somebody to go buy something. My question is, what the hell do they do for the rest of the week?
Right. Okay. Yeah.
What are they doing between your episodes? If they're in your Facebook group, they're part of your brand. If they join something else, they're part of your brand. You are part of what they do. You are part of who they are. They're most likely going to work with you. So I understand that's like a fairly deep thing, but
Yeah.
I think that's the most valuable thing I can give is make sure you're asking, why are people here? So how did somebody and why did somebody arrive where they are? Where do they go after this? That will keep them engaged and adding value. So you will keep them engaged and you will keep adding value to them.
Right.
Because the interesting thing is when somebody gets all the way to the bottom and they're exchanging money for your time, they are more likely to pour into social media. They are more likely to engage in the social media, in the Facebook group. They're going to listen to the podcast. I'm trying to create a system where somebody comes in and they stay forever because there's so much value.
Right.
That's what the goal is. And you can set that up pretty quickly, right? You don't need 1 million listeners to have a Facebook group.
Right. True. Yeah.
The sooner you get the Facebook group, the sooner you can figure out what works and what doesn't. So that's what, and like that literally is what I tell podcasters who come to me and say, I'm 20 episodes in.
Yeah.
What do I do? This. And then I want you to make sure you're engaging on social media every single day.
Right.
Somebody likes your stuff, check them out. Like go stalk them and send them a message and say, hey, thank you for the support. On to the next one. Boom, boom, boom. Like that level of just consistent relationship building.
Right. And I've heard that. And you know what? That has been, over the different businesses that I've had, social media has definitely been my weakness. It's just one of those things. And I think a lot of it comes down to, imposter syndrome where, yeah, I don't feel like I'm good enough to do, that. Like, look at this person. They're getting so many views. Hell, I don't get any views. And so the social media aspect of it is almost a business in itself where you're trying to figure out, okay, what do I need to put up there for people to become engaged and involved? And I've heard it said, because, you talk about the video aspect and I never planned on doing video. My first episodes, there was no video, and it's because I thought, well, you don't need to look at this mug, once a week. You got better things you can look at. But no, seriously, it just wasn't a thought in my mind. And then I heard people like yourself say, you know what, get as many touch points as you can. Take this video, which you and I are doing right now, and upload it. And who cares if it's raw? It seems like, we're in a point now where you look at things like TikTok and that it's raw. And I'm sure some people script it and do that shit, but you seem to be finding that the raw stuff, the real stuff seems to be what people are leaning towards. They're seeing, you know what? Yeah, so what? They messed up. That's life. Who cares? You fumbled through the interview or whatever. Yeah. And then you talk about, taking snippets from it. We can turn this video between you and me, this hour conversation, like you say, into, 8 different touch points where it was one product. And yeah, I got so much more value out of it. It doesn't matter how much value came out of each spot overall. It's how much was put into the total bucket.
Yep.
So that's an interesting approach that I think is probably the tough part. I know for me, and I'm sure for a lot of people, figuring out, the different business aspects of it. Right. So
social media is a hard thing. Like I don't have a lot of followers, so it's not like I'm winning on social media.
Right.
The interesting thing is though, you can't see behind the scenes. So you don't know how many conversations I'm having with the community. That's for me. I don't really care about the views. I had a client yesterday say this to me. They're like, I don't know. My videos aren't getting any views. I said, it's not about the views. It's marketing. You're marketing the brand. When somebody goes on it just suggests that you're more all in. I mean, that's one of the things, like the psychology behind it is huge.
Right.
The other thing is you're building the systems. Like, so what are you going to jump from not doing video to having world-class video? No, that's not going to happen.
Right.
Unless you hire a team. But yeah, it's very interesting. But even to that, all I'm saying about the foundation level, like level 1, throw the video up, throw the audio up. If you don't know how to edit it, throw it up. And then level 2 is now I know how to add the intro, the outro, the midtro.
Right.
I cut the I cut the likes, I know how to fix the static. And now I have like a little idea of what to do with a video. Cool.
Right.
And then 200 episodes later, everything looks a lot better than it would have.
Right. And I think that's the trap a lot of us fall into is it needs to be perfect, now. And it's just thinking that, you know what? So what? This is just a start. 200 episodes, which seems like a hell of a long time for me, and anybody new. 200 episodes, people aren't going to watch for that long because I sucked for the first 50, right? And I think it's getting past that, that you just say, you know what, just do it. Just learn as you go. Don't wait for everything to be perfect, which, was one of my downfalls through a lot of my life. I'm a perfectionist, and that can lead to procrastination because it's not quite ready. Oh, I'm just not quite, where it needs to be yet.
Yeah.
And you suffer that analysis paralysis, and you just never, push forward. So I think the big thing, message is just push forward. And, I know you're big on, and one of the, success things is just be consistent. If you're going to do this once a week, do it once a week, right? If you're going to post on social media 3 times a day, post on social media 3 times a day. It's got to be, consistent, but it also has to be realistic. You have to say to yourself, this is attainable. This is what I can do and be comfortable doing.
Yep. Sustainable.
Because like I've heard you say, right? Your favorite TV show comes on Thursday night at 8 o'clock. Well, then my damn podcast that I listen to better be on Thursday night at 8 o'clock because I'm enjoying it. I'm liking it. So, so what are some of the biggest mistakes you see new podcasters make?
They have guests on that don't make any sense. not that the guests can't add value.
Right.
I've literally gotten off a podcast with somebody before, and I was like, you have a podcast about stay-at-home mom mindsets. You shouldn't have asked me about podcasting.
Right. Okay.
If you want to redo it, I'm happy to do it. This episode will not be valuable to your community.
Right.
It's that, like, you have to be so hyper-focused on who you're serving. That's the biggest mistake I've seen. The other one is not tracking your listens.
Okay.
I'll say to somebody, how many listens do you have? And they're like, I have no idea. It's like, if you didn't know how much money you had in the bank, you'd play life differently. So you're playing the podcast differently. That, not looking at the data. So a great understanding for this. If you're talking to an audience that values vulnerability, and you do an episode that says 5 ways to be more vulnerable in your relationship, and then you look at the data and that's the highest listened episode, what does that say? Ooh, interesting.
Right.
That title works really well. That topic works really well. What can we talk about off of vulnerability? Ooh, boundaries. Ooh, okay. Facing fears, courage. Okay, interesting.
Right.
Overcoming or dealing with the fear of judgment. Okay, interesting. That's how we've gotten to the level of episodes we have. We talk about a lot of the same stuff.
Right.
But it's always in a different way, with a different story, with a different intention at the end. So that's a big one, not looking at the data. Huge one.
Right.
And then missing. I have a graph of one of our clients who is one of the best podcasters I've ever met. A great speaker, but he's inconsistent.
Right.
And he'll never hit exponential. He will never hit exponential growth. He's linear. And the growth is very small. Because he misses episodes.
Right. Okay.
That's a big one. And then I would say, what's the last one? The last one is undervaluing the one listen, undervaluing what one listen and one listener means in the grand scale long term.
Right.
You just opened up a cookie shop and you have one person who comes in every day, you'd be pretty happy about that.
Right.
Right. Like that's $7 a day or whatever it is. It's better than no one. And then this is what you do. You make sure you focus on that one person and you give them the best damn cookie experience you can give them. And they might tell somebody. If they tell 4 people, now you got 4 people a day. Right. Like,
yeah.
One person is a lot of people when you just started something. Last thing, misaligned expectations. Reggie, I have talked to maybe 1,000 podcasters at this point. When I start with somebody, this is what happens. And I say this sometimes. I think sometimes people are paying me for new expectations. One of 2 things. Hey, you're doing way better than you think. Wait, you have 15,000 downloads? You're doing way better than you think.
Right.
Or, oh, you want to get to 150,000 downloads this year and you haven't started yet? Not going to happen.
Right.
Most likely not going to happen. Let me just paint the picture of the expectations. So at least if you end up upset, you don't quit. Or if the opposite, if you are upset because you're wrong about your expectations and you're doing better than you think, you don't quit because you're winning. I don't want you to quit. So the expectations one is a huge one, like
Right.
the biggest one.
Right.
And I think that's in anything, honestly.
Yeah. And it's funny you use that analogy of the one cookie, one customer, because I just used this in one of my, golden nuggets that we'll get to at the end. But I even had a guest on that said, sometimes our expectations when we're starting something new, regardless of what it is we need to make this big splash. We're expecting that we open the doors and ta-da, I've got people lined up for the, it's like I'm selling the latest Apple iPhone where I've got crowds lined up and she used the analogy that just put one drop in the pond and it's going to create a ripple. Right. And if you keep that consistent drop going into that bucket, into that pond, next thing you know, it's starting to fill up. It's creating more ripples. Right. And then all of a sudden it's a freaking wave. And it's like, where the hell did that come from? Well, it came from that one drop.
Yeah.
Right. So that was great when you talked about, that one cookie, make it the best damn cookie that they've ever had. Right. So that's awesome. So I saw a stat, we're talking about, the mistakes you see people make. And I just want to make sure I get the numbers right here. So I saw a stat that 75% of podcasters discontinue within the first 12 months. 90% don't even seem to get past episode 3. And out of those that are left, they don't get past episode 20. For a lot of people, thinking about doing their podcast and not wanting to become one of those statistics, I know that's where Next Level University can help. So why don't we talk about, I know the podcast is there, but I know you and Alan are doing other things as well. Talk to me about Next Level University and what you're doing there.
Yeah, it's very interesting because usually people are very clear on their business. I won't say I'm not. We just have a lot going on. So yes, we have a podcast. We do an episode every day. That will always be free. We're never going to have ads other than our own for like our own products and services. So that's our jam. From there, if you're looking for business advice, business support, business consulting, Alan does that at a very high level. If you're looking for mindset coaching, peak performance coaching, I do that with a lot of our clients. And then we just have like so much under there. We have social media. We have a website team. We have a virtual assistant team where it really is this, Reggie. When we figure out how to do something that we didn't know how to do, we said, oh, interesting. People who are trying to grow like we're trying to grow are going to need the same help. Let's just build a unit. All right, cool. Now we have that unit. One of the biggest things we do, we have a podcast company as well, right? 1,250 episodes. A lot of people reached out and said, hey, how did you get to where you are? What should I do? So I created a subdivision called Next Level Podcast Solutions where we help podcasters. So that's another thing we have. And then I have a podcast called Podcast Growth University as well for the podcasters out there.
Right. Which I listen to, by the way.
I appreciate it.
But so when you talk about, business help, it's not just for podcasters though. No. It could be anybody who's doing anything and they're trying to get to that next level so they can come to Next Level University and get some help with that.
Yeah. So that was kind of the interesting part is like, we have 2 communities. So I primarily serve podcasters because I'm the podcast guy. I'm the one who figured out all the tech in the beginning and I'm the one who did all the coaching.
Right.
Where Alan serves a lot of the Next Level University. So it's just a different demographic. Right. That's the interesting piece of our business. So we really can serve anybody, new entrepreneur, seasoned entrepreneur, podcaster, as an entrepreneur. We're in a good position to really help a lot of people. That's the ultimate goal.
Right. That's awesome. Now tell me, I know you have a course on there and I think it's free. It's called Next Level 5 to Thrive. Right. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. Alan and we had a custom studio in Worcester. So Worcester is Worcester.
Worcester. Okay.
Reggie, everybody says it that way. So you are 1,000% good.
Right.
We had a custom studio there. We don't do it anymore. We just podcast from home, but we took an entire Sunday and we said, all right, we're going to record a paid course. That was our intention with this. What do we think is the most valuable things, like the 5 things that people could learn, especially early entrepreneurs, especially people new to self-improvement? And we said, all right, there's consistency, there's commitment, there's community, there's confidence, and there's clarity. Like those kind of are the 5 things. They all start with C. Let's do them.
Right.
So we spend 12 hours on a Sunday recording this. We package it up. We send it off to the team. We get it all done. And then Alan's like, hey, we should give this away for free. And I was like, all right, whatever. I thought we were going to make money with it, but let's give it away for free.
All right.
So it's an hour and a half course on video with cutscenes and worksheets and a whole thing on our website, completely free. It's yours. You can download it. You can share it with your friends, whatever you want to do. My goal was hopefully it's the most valuable free resource you can find.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome. And I will be putting a link to that on the website so people can get to it. But now there's something else you do at Next Level University with the company that I found very interesting. And I know it kind of goes back to both yours and Alan's roots. And you have a charity called Next Level Hope Foundation.
Yes.
Talk to us about that, because I think that's great, right? I think part of giving back is, should be part of every company's goal. I had a gentleman on who is the definition of giver, and we don't see enough of that. I think in our society nowadays, we've become very, self-focused, whether it's a survivorship thing or whatever in the way the world's going nowadays. But tell us about your foundation.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it very much. You clearly did a lot of research. Right? You weren't kidding. So yeah, it's called Next Level Hope Foundation. Alan and I were both raised without fathers. My dad left and his father passed away in a car accident when Alan was 2. So Alan didn't know his dad at all. And we feel like if we had positive male role models in our lives, they might have looked differently. So we said, all right, this is what we're going to do. Every single Father's Day, Alan and I spend together because we don't, we'd never had fathers to spend it with.
Right.
So we used to go fishing or we'd do whatever. We'd go work out. And then we said, hey, you know what we should do on Father's Day? We should have a charity event. That's what we should do, where we get together with a bunch of children who have single parents, because maybe it might not be a father situation. Maybe it's a mother, but we want something that usually could be a potentially sad day to be a very happy day. So last year we did our first one on Father's Day.
Right.
It was awesome. It was the best thing in the world. And we said, you know what? We're going to do one at the holidays too. So we actually did one in December, and I think we had, 25 kids, and we had Christmas presents for everybody.
That's awesome.
And we did family photos. It was awesome. It was amazing. So yeah, for us, our goal is to grow that every year. We want to double the amount of money we commit, as well as double the amount of humans we serve every single year. That is our ultimate goal.
Yeah, no, and that's awesome. And I know you got one coming up in June, I think, June 18th, coming up. So, hopefully, I'm not sure if we have a link that I'll be able to put on the website for that, where people can either attend, donate, whatever it is. But I think it's great. Now, are you in a small town? Is, Worcester or whatever?
No,
Worcester's big. Worcester's big, is it? Yeah.
Worcester, I believe, is the second biggest city in Massachusetts.
Oh, really?
Behind Boston, I think. It's very, very large. So,
okay.
Yeah, we both grew up in a town like 20 minutes from Worcester. So, and that was where our headquarters was. So we said, anybody around that area, we want to give back in Massachusetts.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. You know what? I'm sure that the people there appreciate it, right? Whether they realize it now or not, as kids, because I grew up without a father as well. And for me, I never really realized it. Mom made sure I never needed for anything, even though I had nothing. I never felt that missing point, but it doesn't mean that people don't. And even though the kids may not realize it now, this could be one of those changing moments in that kid's life. So thank you, for doing that. So
I appreciate it. it.
So let's turn away from business. Let's turn away from Kevin, and let's have a little bit of fun here before we start to wrap things up. I like to ask my guests some kind of fun questions. Do you have a bucket list?
Two things. It's really one thing now. Swimming with sharks.
Okay.
In a shark cage. My wife wants to do it
in a cage. Wow.
In a cage.
Yeah.
That's my biggest fear.
Right.
So my biggest fear is sharks. I wanted to have at least one amateur fight, boxing, mixed martial arts, Muay Thai. I now value my brain more than I ever did. So I don't think that's the right thing. That was on my bucket list.
Right.
Other thing, to make a full rap album.
Oh,
that's
really?
on my bucket list. Yeah.
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 That's awesome. So are you still, do you go out to open mics and rap and stuff, or is it just something you do in the shower or to annoy your wife around the house?
No, so I'm lucky because I have a studio and I have a mic and I have multiple mics. So no, I'll sit down and I'll buy a beat for $20 and I'll just like sit down and write a song and record it. And I dropped one recently a couple weeks ago on social media. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Oh, that's awesome.
No open mics yet. I haven't got the courage, but
no.
Hopefully in 10 or 15 years we'll be successful enough where I'll be able to know some of these successful rappers and maybe do a collaboration.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, that's definitely, you know what, I used to, and I still do, but music has always been a big part of my life. And I grew up, I was in a band in high school, and I love singing. I remember the first time I got on stage, it was at a battle of the bands. And, I looked out on the crowd and I froze. It was the longest, probably 5 seconds, but it was the longest 5 seconds of my life when you're looking out at people, and it's just like, what the fuck am I doing here? But once you get past that, I knocked skydiving off my bucket list a couple of years ago. It was pretty cool. So
congrats.
Yeah, thank you.
Not for me. No. No.
Yeah, you know what? I won't bungee jump. I got no interest in bungee jumping, but I jumped out of a plane, so I don't understand it. But if money were no object, and I know you've been down this road, you had this stuff that you thought would bring you happiness, but if money was no object now for Kevin, what would you buy yourself? What would you do?
One of my goals, this is still one of my goals, I would go to the mall, I'd go to the supermarket, I'd go to a car dealership and buy somebody in need whatever they need. Awesome. Whatever that may be. That is my goal. That is one of the reasons I want to be wealthy. Yeah. So that is what I will be doing in the future. The same thing I will be doing in the future. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No, that's awesome. What are some of your pet peeves? What kind of gets you kind of fired up where it's like you want to smack somebody upside the head?
Being late is a big one.
Right.
I always try to be early. That's just who I am. People who are rude and inconsiderate of people who are perceived as less than them. Like if you go to a restaurant, you're mean to a waiter or a waitress, or you're mean to somebody who, a fast food employee, like you're probably not a good human. Right. I can't stand that. That entitlement.
Yes.
Entitlement, arrogance, toxic masculinity. Those are my biggest pet peeves.
Yes. Yes. I've always said, you know what, I could never work. And that is, I've worked in a lot of industries as well, but the service industry where, here in Canada, it's Tim Hortons or Starbucks or whatever, I'd be fired first day. Because, they put up with a lot of shit. And like you say, you know what, that's just not, they're just doing their job. Just, grow up a little bit and stop that entitlement. So last question, does pineapple go on pizza?
If it floats your boat. Yeah, it doesn't. I mean, if you get pineapple on your pizza, it doesn't hurt me. So yeah, for sure. If that's what you like what you like.
So I'm taking it there's no pineapple on Kevin's pizza at his house.
No. Pepperoni, feta, well done.
Right.
That's my pizza, yeah.
That's awesome. Well, listen, Kevin, you know what? It's been great having you on the show. I truly appreciate all the, golden nuggets, which, I do at the end of my show, but that you shared here for any of the listeners who are thinking about, you know what, maybe, for me, like I said, this podcast thing was a back burner thing. I've been thinking about it, just never, it wasn't the right time. I made the excuses. And I tell you what, like I told you in the beginning, you know what, I'm loving it. Like, whether it goes to where I'm hoping it'll go, who knows? But in the meantime, I'm enjoying the ride. So thank you for sharing, with my legends, as I call them, some of the tips and tricks that you would do if starting out. So I totally appreciate that. If people want to, get a hold of Kevin, if people want to find out about Next Level University, how do they do that?
I would say just search the podcast. I think that, search Next Level University. We're on all the platforms. We're on YouTube. I just think it's the easiest way to get to know us. You'll find out pretty quickly, hey, these guys are from me. They're not. No sweat either way. We want to serve you. If you're not the audience, that's totally cool. And then everything you need is in our show notes as well. So our emails, our social media handles, all that stuff.
Awesome. And like I said, I'll be putting, as much as I can on the website as well, so people can reach out. So,
thank you.
So I'm going to wrap it up with, my show and the golden nugget. And on today's show, and I took a little bit of it from what I learned about Kevin during my research, because that's what I do. I research stuff. That's that perfectionist part. But so listen, they say that the same water that makes an egg turn hard will make a potato turn soft. You need to dictate your environment, right? And I think Kevin touched on that in order to become successful and not let your environment dictate you. So I'm going to give you a little bit of homework, and I know my legends love homework. So, I'm going to have you actually use a tool that I've heard Kevin uses with some of his clients. And I want you to grab a piece of paper, and I want you to make 3 columns. And you're going to title those columns, right? Core beliefs, core values, core aspirations. And then I want you to look at the 3 main areas of your life. And I know Kevin looked at these because he brought it up today. So it's kind of interesting how it fits in. I want you to look at your work, your neighborhood, and the people you associate with. And with that, I want you to ask yourself, how are each of these areas contributing to my 3 columns, right? Are they helping me achieve my core values, belief, aspirations, or are they hindering in that? And if you find they're hindering, you need to make some changes, right? They're holding you back, regardless of whether you believe it or not. And remember, change doesn't happen overnight, right? Kevin made some changes overnight. He gave up some big stuff and made a career. But for most people, change can't happen overnight, but neither does success. So keep striving, keep pushing forward. Like we said, one drop into the pond can make a huge difference, and one day at a time. So that's a wrap for today's show, Legends. I want to thank you for allowing Kevin into your world today. I totally appreciate it. And if you haven't done so already, hit that subscribe button so we can do this again next week. And then get your ass out there and start becoming that legend you're destined to be. That's a wrap. Talk to you next week, guys.